Hey again, we're continuing discussions of culture shock and especially focusing on this time the four stages of culture shock. And as I said, this is not to be discouraging, it's to be creating a toolbox for knowing what you're going to face and helping to disarm that because when you're aware that you're facing something that is normal, it doesn't have as much power over you. And I feel like that's a very important thing to be aware of. The four stages of culture shock, as I mentioned in the other lecture, this is a little bit like Psychology 101 because this is just dealing with some issues that are very much involved with our mental, with our thinking, with the way we are perceiving things. But these are normal and natural processes that we go through while we're trying to learn how to properly handle these changes that we're facing. We talked a little bit about this culture shock being caused by processing change, talked about being a psychological strain. And another way, culture shock is actually a form of grief. You are grieving the loss of familiarity, grieving the loss of familial connections, friendship connections. You're grieving the loss of being able to control your surroundings as effectively, being able to take care of yourself, answer your own questions, those type of things. So this is a grief, and therefore, not unlike the stages of grief, these stages of culture shock have some similarity to that as well. So we're going to look at those just for a few minutes. So first of all, the first stage of culture shock is the tourist stage. And I mentioned in the last lecture that one of the things about a short-term missions trip is you rarely leave this tourist stage. The tourist stage is called denial. Denial is pretending like there is not that much different. Pretending like, oh, this is just like that, or this is just like when we did this, or this is just like when short-term mission trips are always saying, oh, we ate roasted crickets. It was just like eating popcorn. It's like, no, it's not. It doesn't taste anything like popcorn. It's nothing like eating popcorn. But in the tourist stage, you're just experiencing new things. And, oh, isn't it exciting that we get to experience these new things? And that's wonderful. And I tell you, even first arriving on the mission field for a long-term appointment, that's still wonderful to experience, though, that freshness and newness and the excitement of new experiences. Nothing wrong with that at all. So I'm not trying to put that down in any way. But do understand that that is not where you will stay for very long. A month to maybe 3 months, you live in that tourist stage where you basically are looking for the familiarity, looking for similarity, and then only after a while do you become aware of the fact that no, this isn't anything like home. This is it. Even the things that seem like they're like home, they're not. And so that's the first stage. The second stage is kind of the anger stage, and it's the feeling of rejecting these differences. The statement that comes up very often in this stage is, that's just stupid. I can remember my very first time at getting a residence permit in Latvia. I said the term, that is just stupid, I don't know how many times, because it was stupid. It was just stupid. Okay, we had a family of 5, including my wife and I, my 3 children. There was a 17-page form that had to be filled out. It had to be filled out for each of us separately. It had to be filled out in pen, in handwriting. There was no digital form. There was no way of typing in the form. It had to be handwritten in blue ink, mind you. It had to be in blue ink. It could not have any mark-throughs or corrections. If you got to page 14 and you made a mistake, you started over, okay? Then we turned in our paperwork, and I turned in this big old pile of everything I could think of that they could possibly need, everything from my passports to my my ministerial appointment license and all this kind of stuff. And then they came back with another list and another list and another list. And every time I turned in a document, there was another list of documents I had to turn in along with it. It took nearly 5 months. Now, not 5 months, 8 hours a day every day, But 5 months of spending a day here, and then a week later spending another day, and 2 weeks later spending a day. And it took 5 months of my life to get our very first residence permit. And there were a lot of times I said, this is just stupid. Why does it have to be this way? Why are they behaving this way? Why do they do that? Why can't they just accept the fact that I'm here? I mean, we were well along the process. They said, oh yes, and we need a copy of your marriage license. And I'm like, my marriage license? I mean, this woman named Terry Roberts is here with a person named Jerry Roberts, and we've got our 3 kids with us. What do you need a marriage license for? Our license, our driver's licenses match up, the same last name, and do you think we're here pretending to be married? What's that? Anyway, see what I'm saying? So there, and the same thing is going to be true of certain behaviors, certain actions, certain ways. Why will these people not just say no instead of saying yes and then expecting me to understand that it's no? This is just stupid, okay? So understand, that's a part of the culture shock process. There's also a stage of sadness. Sadness can be homesickness. It can be questioning the reality of the missionary call. Did I hear wrong? Is this where I'm really supposed to be? Is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? Homesickness, the missing people. I mean, you do real well for a while, and then it comes to Easter, and on Easter you're used to seeing your mom and dad and having fun with the cousins or whatever else, and Easter comes, and oh no, I'm not there with my family. That's going to be very sad. And then, so basically, there's this process, and then after you go through these 3 stages, then there's this process of resolution, and it's better known as acculturation. Resolution and acculturation does not mean you're bicultural. It doesn't mean you've got the language memorized. It doesn't mean you're fluent. It doesn't mean you fully function in the society. It's just when you finally see over the horizon, you can see a day when you're going to fit in. You can see a day when you're going to be able to speak this language. You can see a day when you're going to know the right answers when somebody asks you a question. You're going to know how to properly respond. You're going to know, you can start to see a day, that acculturation, you begin to acknowledge and accept the fact that you are acculturating. Now, the truth is, there are some who go through this process and never reach resolution. They get stuck in the denial, anger, and sadness loop, and they just stay there. And if they never reach resolution, never really begin acculturation, it can lead to depression. It can lead to despondency, a feeling of just giving up. Oftentimes, especially among Americans, it leads to being a workaholic. I can't ever come to peace with this place, so I'm just going to work twice as hard as everyone else. I'm not going to learn the language, and I can't figure out all this stupid stuff, but I'm going to put in 12-hour days, 6 days a week to compensate for the fact that I can't figure this out. All right, sometimes it leads to withdrawal, So resolution, acculturation is where you want to be. Don't turn to workaholism. You're better continuing to strive to learn the culture, learn the language, to acculturate, than you are to start putting in 12-hour days and lose your spouse, lose connection with your children, frustrate those who are around you by becoming a workaholic or by withdrawing and such. So now one thing I want to point out on this before we move on. This, like all sociological, psychological processes, this is not a clean-cut process. This is not from months 3 through 5, I go through denial. 1 through 3, I go through denial. 3 through 5, I go through anger. 5 through 8, I go through sadness. And starting in month 9, I go through resolution. Sorry, I wish it were that way. It's not. It's a spiral. If I had a whiteboard to draw it, I would draw this spiral. And I'll just show you that the thing about a spiral is it continually goes up, but then it loops back on itself. But it gets a little higher, then it loops back on itself, and it gets a little higher, it loops back on itself. And there's this constant looping that takes place where you go through the denial a little bit, and then you feel a little bit of anger, and then you feel a little sadness, but then you feel resolution, and then you've got anger again, and then some more sadness, and then denial, and then anger, and then resolution, and then you feel a little angry, then you feel it's this continual cycling back. But what you have to be aware of is that you are moving forward. Just like a spring is not just a circle that keeps going around and around and around the same place. A spring has an upward momentum to it. And that's what you have to see this as. Even though in month 9, one more time you hit this is just stupid. I can't believe we're going through this. Well, understand that you've already dealt with that situation 4 times and you're getting better at it. This is just another one you didn't know about. This is just another situation. And okay, so you've gotten through the sadness part in month 5, but then, like we had happen about month 8, my grandmother died. And all of a sudden, I'm back in the sadness motif again because I hadn't seen her in 8 months. I didn't get to see her before she passed away. Didn't get to go home for her funeral. So I dropped back into the sadness motif for a few weeks, and then I cycled back out of that. So just be aware that the culture shock situation is not a one-time simple fix. Walk through it and check off your check boxes as you go through. Culture shock is a process. It's a process to work through. So, as I said, don't get frustrated by this. Don't be afraid of it. If I were going to, I'll just say it this way. I, about 2.5 years ago, hiked from the top of the Grand Canyon down to the river at the bottom, all the way back up out of the Grand Canyon. It was an amazing experience, and I would love to have you do it too. If you haven't done something like that, it's amazing. But let me give you a warning. If you're going to hike down to the bottom of the Grand Canyon and back, you better go into training because it's going to hurt. You're going to be exhausted. You're going to be scared sometimes because there's parts of it you don't think you're ever going to get out. It's long. It's grueling. If you're in the summer, it's hot. If you're in the winter, it's really cold. We were walking on ice and snow. We went in February. We were walking on ice and snow at the top, about 1.5 miles of each of the trip down and the trip up. It's scary, it's exhausting, and it's the most wonderful experience I've ever had. It's okay, see? In the same way, crossing cultures, working as a cross-cultural minister, a cross-cultural missionary, living among a people group is wonderful. There's nothing that compares to the excitement, the energy of learning a new language, of learning a new culture, being able to interact with people that you never could interact with before. But there's going to be some hard parts to it. You're going to walk through culture shock. You're going to walk through some difficulties. So just like the Grand Canyon, the fact that it's going to be difficulties is not me saying don't do that. It's saying just be ready for the difficulties and the joys that come along with the difficulties. In the same way, don't be afraid. Don't get nervous. Don't get discouraged by this. This lecture, the one before it, the one after it, don't get discouraged by this. Just understand that one of the purposes of this class is to create tools in your toolbox to help you become effective as you walk through these problems. So that when you're going through denial and anger and sadness and resolution and back through it again, you'll say, oh, I remember this is normal. This is what I should have expected this to happen. And now I am expecting it to happen. Since I'm expecting it to happen, I can walk through it with more grace provided by God. So anyway, we will pick up and talk about a few more aspects concerning culture shock in the next lecture.